Hello guys, it's John. So we're doing another Bottleman discussion. This time I have my God Cap cancellation theory. So obviously God Cap did get, axed. I mean, it ended in January. Nothing's been, said since. Bottleman at this point is likely over. My theory isn't about Bottleman itself, being cancelled. I mean, it happened. It is what it is. But I think that there was actually a specific shift during God Cap that may have led to its, cancellation, and maybe some releases actually were mixed up. That's kind of what this theory's about. Some releases got changed after a point, and yeah. I think maybe this decision would have happened probably around the time God Cap started, or even before, honestly, like late DX. Because God Cap was weird. Some of the release patterns were just weird. Now, obviously, this season from the start seemed to have a bigger emphasis on remakes. Of course, on the screen right now, I do have, Draggart G, and also along with this, in March 2023, we got Samuth's G, which was, the other main Bottleman, but unlike other seasons where we got, 3 main Bottleman releases, we only have these 2. And we also got Cobalt Bottle G. Now, there are no remakes in the prototype line, we just had the main 3, and then in DX, well, we had the main 3, 1 per each main type, plus a remake. So we had 4 at the start, and now we only have 3. No control type, instead just a remake, so it definitely seems like they were downscaling anyway. I think there's a chance that God Cap was meant to be the end of Bottleman in general. There's a pretty good shot of that happening. Maybe if it did crazy, they would, hurry up and get like a 4th, system going, but I think there's a good chance this was meant to be the end anyway. They're clearly, slowing down a little bit. So, the start of Bottleman God Cap, this is what we got. And then for April, not long after, we would get our next release, and that was Bottle Wyvern G. So, yet another remake. Nothing too weird about that. But then they skipped May, and we didn't get anything else until June with Decaby Tiger G, our first actual, control type. So, finally, there we go. And then we actually had a pretty good couple months, In July, we got our first multi-type, Kokoro OG, a pretty cool Bottleman. However, some things were kind of odd with this thing. I mean, the fact that it had, like, the power-type arms, which I probably should have grabbed. I did not, but anyway. Its cannon wings, it had those. Those always seem like a weird inclusion here, but I guess it kind of makes sense thematically. I always thought maybe those were, like, repurposed from something else, but who knows. Everything else here, yeah, it's pretty much fine, I would say. Moving on to our August release, we have Bottle Phoenix G, and this is the final release I think was actually fully normal, because after this we didn't have any other releases in, September, and the October releases were at the very end of October. There was like a 2.5-month window with just nothing. And I think, based on just kind of the oddity and also the fact that there were definitely some changes after that point, the October releases themselves were normal, but I think after that they were a bit weird. So basically, I think, basically, based on the plans, right? Whenever they were planning out God Cap and they were, in production of God Cap, they probably got to this point, and then whatever was next, I think is when they opted to change everything up. I think there was a big shift in production, and they opted to just go all in on remakes, because again, I just think that maybe these things weren't profitable anymore, they weren't selling well enough, and they eventually just made the shift to go all in on, again, remakes, and just other stuff that wasn't requiring them to make new parts, because again, they have to make new molds, that costs money. So yeah, I think this is when they opted to just change it. And let me explain what I mean, because just saying that as a blanket statement is kind of weird, I feel. But let's go and get in October. Now you'll see with October, once we get there, it's fairly standard. We had Bottle Sphinx G, okay, another just remake, but also Cola OG, this absolutely massive thing here. Which, yeah, I can't even put this thing on my camera properly. Yeah, this thing was huge. This was not, like, this was definitely planned, and I think they probably wanted to release this thing because it was crazy. And it does kind of make it for a good capstone, release. Was this meant to be released in October? Honestly, I could have seen this thing maybe being a December release or something, or just any kind of later release, but maybe they opted to push it back or something. But, not push it back, push it forward. But regardless of when it was supposed to be released, I think this was definitely the last intentional release. But there were some oddities here. You might notice, it's kind of hard to see actually, but if I turn it, you might just be able to see underneath there, kind of. Try and fix the focus. There's like a little bit of a hole right here. Yeah, I think you could see that. Why is that hole there? My assumption is that it was meant to be for a big cap barrel. And I believe something like that would have been released on a later Bottleman with a big cap core and a barrel. I don't think this was meant to be the only Bottleman in this style. I think there were meant to be more like this. Again, maybe releases could have been shuffled around, but at some point I think more were meant to be here. I think there were just other things like this that should have been released. Again, there's just some oddities with this one in particular. Maybe more God Caps should have been available. I don't know. Again, it's hard to theorize this stuff, but I just think that this was not the only thing like this. Let's just go and move on to continue my explanations here. Because November is where we get the biggest oddity of all. And that is Sprightening G. November, I thought, would have been more prevalent than it really was. I thought there would have been more. Based on the product listings, this was like the only thing, so maybe there was only one thing in November, but at the same time, there's always a chance that there could have been multiple releases and they were able to change those in time. I mean, we've seen Takatomi, like with Beyblade, for example, like in Zero G, they did cancel products and, repurpose those product numbers for other things. It's not impossible. But still, regardless, November, I think even if you assume that Sprightening G is the right Bottleman, I don't think for a second that it was meant to be like this. So my theory is that maybe there were supposed to be some other new Bottleman, new motifs. I mean, we saw that there weren't a ton of evolutions in God Cap. I mean, yeah, you got Cola Oju, which is kind of one, and then also Samets, but the other ones are all new. So, Sprightening might have been an actual new motif, and I think maybe there were supposed to be a few other new motifs here. Hell, there could have even been some during God Cap. Actually, it's possible that God Cap entirely was supposed to have less remakes, but they downsized because DX, maybe earlier on wasn't doing so well. And then by the time they were kind of getting closer to God Cap, they had to downsize yet again. I fully believe Sprightening, if it did exist, was meant to be a new Bottleman. I think this was just sort of an after image of what it was supposed to be. Like, okay, multi-hit core, maybe some kind of barrel magazine, maybe a quadrupedal design. These things I think were likely meant to be in the original, but they just made it like this because, oh, well, we can kind of use pre-existing parts to give an idea of what the original Sprightening was supposed to be like. I think that's what they did here. If not, it's a filler release, but at the same time, why make a filler release with a new motif? We've seen that in the prototype line. They had filler releases, but those were always just recolors. Like, the Golden Kolomaru or whatever. They could have done stuff like that if they were, doing that. Or just, again, other remakes. But instead they opted to just make a new motif, but it's just a custom build with old parts. Why do that unless this was meant to be kind of showing what we were supposed to get to the best of their ability? Now we move on to December. Now there are kind of two waves in December. The first one was a set, the Team Gut set. And this set is very hard for me to try and defend. Because you have these three Super Beat'em remakes, the three that we got during God Cap. And they're translucent, that's it. I think this set, there was supposed to be a God Cap set that's probably going to be like a fusion set or something like actually more interesting, maybe a DX customized set type of thing. Anything like that, Just some other bigger set. And I think that, again, based on the budget cuts, they didn't want to make new parts. They probably would have had to make a lot of new stuff for a whole new set. If it's a fusion set, you have to make like multiple new Bottleman. Even for a DX customized set type of deal, they would have had to make, again, at least one like fully new Bottleman and then probably a couple of new parts. And probably just didn't want to do that. And, well, they want to get a set release out for holiday, so let's just use parts that we've already had. And just throw them in a set, and, I mean, the Team Gut set, that gets some nostalgia going, that works as a holiday set, right? I think that was the idea here. I fully believe the set was meant to be something completely different that would have had much, much more, actual relevance with God Cap. Maybe, multiple new types of caps. Again, possibly even a fusion. Honestly, would not have put it past them to try and, remake the first, or like make evolutions to the first 6 Bottleman. This could have been like a Rising Milk Fusion Black God Cap set, maybe like a Blend Dragon G or something. Seems plausible, I would say. Maybe again, if there are multiple releases that just got canned completely and taken out of the line, not even just like, the releases themselves, like even their product numbers, like maybe there's supposed to be more products released in this year. Well, I could have seen something like a, Wonder Grape G existing. That gets a little bit more speculative right there, but still, I just want to mention, like, I do think that those could have been done. Even if not, I think that a fusion set, even if it's not those two, I think could have just existed anyway. But this set, it just feels very weird. And I think maybe even a Team Gut set could have existed from the start, but if it did, I would more likely believe that it was meant to just be these 3 Bottlemen, in their original color schemes. Maybe again, maybe these remakes back in like the first draft of God Cap was meant where they were meant to just be kind of side things, not as important, so they would have just thrown these 3 into a set instead of releasing them on their own. That would have made more sense. But again, based on like maybe a revision, they put more emphasis on remakes, and then again, based on that second revision, they just completely canned like anything new after a certain point, after October, basically. And yeah, that's probably where these things really come into play. Now we get to December. This was an interesting time. So first up, we do have here Cobalt Bottle Fire G. This one, as a Bottleman, this sticker, I need to fix that. Anyway, as a Bottleman, I could see something like this actually, existing. It makes sense. However, I personally don't believe this would have been the main December release. Usually December releases are the biggest releases, right? Like, look at something like Rising Milk. That was a pretty insane release back in 2020. And of course, that was paired with Fusion Black a month later to make Blend Dragon as a component to that. So, pretty big release. 2021, the biggest thing would be the Double Sparkling set. Sparking Knight and Ten Satan were both pretty insane prototype releases. They were probably the craziest things we've really had since, Rising Milk and Fusion Black. And then 2022, well, we had Dragogena DX. Do I need to say more on that one? No. And then for 2023, with God Cap, we had Cobalt Bottle Fire G. That's a huge disconnect right there. Like, there's no way this was actually intended to be the December release. Maybe this was like a November release, or maybe this was a December release, but they, just had this one instead of whatever main thing they were supposed to be. Or maybe this was even supposed to be in the random collection, and then they moved it out of it because, again, they wanted more out of here. So, yeah, this one, yeah, there was definitely meant to be more. I could have even seen like an Aqua Sports G or a Gyokroc G. I think those two would have been here for sure. Honestly, I could have seen those two maybe even being in the style of Cola OG. Maybe have like those original 3 all having their giant forms. That could have been where like a barrel would have come from, even with like a Gyokroc G. Or even if they weren't like the huge ones like Cola OG, maybe they would have still used like big caps or something. Again, that's where you can get something like that. And even like another like giant one, like Draggart, like a second Draggart in the God Cap line. Which actually, let's get to that. Next thing, Random Collection Volume 4. We're gonna focus on the Draggart G Big Cap or Big Rush version first, because I don't think this thing was just made just to be a cool gold Dragger tree color with a big cap core, to make it more accessible. No. I think this was meant to just give us sort of an idea of what we were supposed to get. A proper... And then, why is the sticker falling off on its face? Okay, there we go. I need to check these stickers. Anyway. So, I think that we were supposed to get a second Draggart G. Again, look at DX. We had Colomar DX, and then later we had Colomar Energy DX. I fully believe that, this was supposed to happen with Draggart in God Cap, but again, they had to scale things back, and when they did that, well, no second Draggart. I don't know if it would have been exactly like this. Hell, it could have been another Cola OG type of Bottleman, but regardless, I think they wanted to give us sort of this idea that, yes, we were supposed to have a proper core for this thing, and, well, it didn't happen. In a lot of ways, this just feels like a better Draggart G. It's not the right color scheme, but still. It's way better than the attachment thing that the original has, and the fact that they just never evolved it just seems wrong. Like, you make a big cap core, and then you have the Bottleman that originally, introduced the big cap, and you don't give it that core or anything similar, so it's outclassed entirely. This just feels like what they were trying to do here to make up for, like, okay, here's at least an idea of what was supposed to happen. Now the other two, Battle Soryoji and Battle Koryoji, I think these two, good candidates for a Random Collection Volume 4. Although Random Collection 4 could have always just been like a full-on Battle Beat-em-on type of remake collection. Again, Cobalt Battle Fire G could have been there. Maybe they're supposed to be like a Chrome Bottle G, like a Chrome Zephyr remake. I could have seen that even existing at some point, whether it be a big random collection with all of them, or just like another like solo release at some point. I could have seen that existing and getting canned. Hell, maybe God Cap would have went on a little bit longer, to like February or March or something. It could have been there. They just decided to cut it off for some reason. I feel like that one was just such a weird exclusion, and especially that one. I think that was meant to get a remake at some point and just didn't. But yeah, these two I think at least make enough sense to get remakes. And now we move on to January, the final release here, which is Welch Great G. Welch Great G, it's the same as Straightening. Again, this could just be a random extra they threw out for no reason, but again, based on having its own unique motif, I believe this was meant to be its own Bottleman. I think it would have been a pretty insane Bottleman. Could have been another big one. Maybe the reason they chose this magazine was just to try and emphasize that it was meant to be a large Bottleman. Who knows, Welch Great G could have been something, much bigger. Could have had like a special barrel. Hell, maybe this is where the big cap barrel was supposed to be from, because it has like a very wide barrel here, with the arms and stuff. And maybe that's why it's so bulky, because again, it's meant to just be a larger bottle. And who knows what this thing was meant to be initially, if it was actually, its own original Bottleman, that they just sort of threw parts together and called it a day. Maybe this was meant to be the big December release. Who knows? But regardless, it just feels like this was meant to be something prevalent in Bottleman that just got scaled back, and they wanted to just recreate it to the best of their ability using pre-existing parts, because obviously they were not really making new parts much at all. In fact, the last new part we got after Cola OG was with Bottle Koryu OG, this horn piece. That's it. That is the only new part we got after October. That was the only one. So it just felt like, that's why I think this theory is so likely, is because they were clearly trying to not make new parts, and they really just didn't. So I think that's kind of what happened there. I think that originally there were supposed to be more things. Again, I think the original first three Bottleman were supposed to all have evolutions here, but we only got Kolomarus. Could have also had things like, Wonder Grape, Rising Milk, Fusion Black also being kind of part of that original group. I think that could have been likely. And again, there probably should have been a fusion somewhere, that could have been, Blend Dragon, or just something new entirely. Doesn't have to be Blend Dragon. I think the remakes were meant to be maybe a bit more separated. Again, you could have a random collection with a lot of the Battle Beat'em-on ones. You could have had the set with the Super Beat'em-on ones. Maybe a few extra solo releases here and there, with some other ones that maybe we didn't get. Again, like a Chrome Zephyr remake was likely, or even some kind of maybe a Blazing Kaiser even, that could happen as well. And especially look at those Battle Beat'em-on remakes. We got, two Cobalts, we got, Soryu and Koryu, but we also got in DX, an Excellion remake. You're gonna tell me we're getting Excellion over Chrome Zephyr, or Blazing Kaiser? Or even Bloody Kaiser? Absolutely no shot that was intentional. That, again, I think that really just shows that there had to have been some kind of shift. And also, again, Sprite and Wonder Grape, I think these two were meant to actually be unique releases that, again, just didn't come to fruition, and they just tried to make a custom build to show what they were, kind of meant to be like. So yeah. I think God Cap ended up just getting completely reworked. I would argue probably twice, probably once, to just have a bigger emphasis on remakes within the line, so there were fewer actual releases, like new releases. And I think that they reworked it partway through production, again, kind of around that August to October time frame, to where they just said, okay, no more new parts, effectively. We're just doing old parts, and that's where a lot of the stuff just fell apart completely. Again, maybe those like bigger things like an Aqua Sports or Gyakok Evolution were, or even like a Dragon Evolution potentially could have got thrown out, but maybe things like Sprightning and Wonder Grape were meant to be there, and then again, those had to be downsized to just being custom builds. So yeah, that's my whole theory. It's kind of a weird theory because again, we just don't have much information, and trying to predict Bottleman after only just having like the 3 lines is kind of difficult to do. But I just want to make a video like this because I think it's an interesting idea, and I think it actually has a decent bit of I don't want to say credibility, but kind of credibility, because again, like you can't look at the Battle Beamon lineup we got and say, yep, that was 100%. Those were the 5 that they wanted, and they made all of them. Like no shot. Especially with like Cancellation getting a remake, like there's no way that makes any sense. I guess you'd say because of CC Leon, but like they had to have seen like Chrome Zephyr or something, and then that had to be considered. And again, I do believe something like that was likely planned until maybe late in production. But anyways, that's all for this video, I think. I've probably gone on long enough on why I think that this is what ended up happening. Do you think that there were any sort of other routes they may have taken, or maybe had planned? Were there any other Bottlemen that you think should have happened, or even remakes that should have happened? Do you think that there was any sort of any extra ideas behind these sort of weird custom builds, like Sprightning and Wonder Grape, or not Wonder Grape, Welsh Great? I hope I haven't been mixing those 2 names up. Sprightning and Welsh Great, yeah, there we go. Anyway, were there more credit? Like, was there actually more behind those, or were they just there and this was like the intention? Who knows? Let me know if you want though. But anyways, yeah, that's all for this video. So, thanks for watching, and bye bye.